Call Longview Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board agenda to order. 10 a.m. Wednesday, February 28, 2018, at the City Hall Council Chambers, 300 West Cotton Street. Number 1 on the agenda is called to order. Number 2 is the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve our community on this board. And we ask that you guide us this morning, help us make the best decisions we can make for this board. In Jesus Christ's name, our Lord. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 3 on the agenda, citizen comment. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and make citizen's comment? If so, please come forward and identify yourself for the record. Having none and seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, approval of the January 10th, 2018 meeting minutes. Ms. Owen.
Judge Stout, before we start the meeting, before I get to the minutes and such, I wanted to introduce our new TxDOT Atlanta District Engineer. This is Michael Anderson. I think most folks call him Mike Anderson. And so he has been selected as the new DE for the Atlanta District, and we wanted to extend a warm welcome to Mike and to being a member of our board and part of our MPO. Welcome, Mike. Vernon, would you give us a little history of
Mike's been around a long time. He's actually from Carthage, grew up in came up in Carthage with the department. Has a long tenure with TxDOT, served a little while before coming back to Atlanta as the Maintenance Division Deputy Director in Austin, so he's got a lot of knowledge, and I know he's happy to be home, and I think they're happy to have him. So.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Not new to the Atlanta district, so like Vernon said, I grew up in it before leaving and going to Austin, which was a short experience for a couple of years. And
I'm sorry.
Glad to be back.
Well, glad. Welcome again. Board members, the minutes were provided in your agenda packet sent out prior to today's meeting. Are there any changes or revisions?
If not, is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Number 5, approval of revisions to the public participation plan. Ms. Wyers?
Thank you, Judge. Board members, for your consideration, I am bringing the revisions to the Longview MPO's public participation plan for approval. It's the intent of the MPO to provide every opportunity for citizens to be involved in the transportation planning process. Because we recognize the importance of public involvement, the MPO outlines procedures in a formal document to ensure that the public is fully informed about public transportation projects, that the public has access to transportation plans and projects, and that the public has opportunities to express opinions and concerns. The public participation plan is being revised for compliance with the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, or the FAST Act. Public involvement for all MPOs will now specifically include notifications to agencies that deal with public ports, private providers of transportation, which includes employer-based commuting programs, carpool, vanpool, and shuttle programs. During the development of the TIP and MTP, the short and long-range plans, the MPO should consult with agencies responsible for tourism and natural disaster risk reduction to keep these agencies informed of our future transportation projects. We've revised the participation plan for compliance with the new federal requirements, and a copy is included in your handouts. This is the second of 2 public meetings for revising the public participation plan for compliance with the FAST Act. A 45-day public comment period was required and held from January 10th to February 24th. We did not receive any comments during the public comment period. This concludes my comments on the public participation plan revisions. Does anybody from the public or the policy board have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Public? I guess not. So at this time, we need a motion to approve the revisions as outlined. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Number 6, approval of revisions to the Unified Planning Work Program. Ms. Owen.
Thank you, Judge Stout. For your consideration, board members, there are revisions to be made to the Unified Planning Work Program. The work program identifies the transportation planning work for MPO staff. First, we're updating the work plan with current figures and programming of $79,000 of carryover from the last fiscal year. Secondly, there's an addition of $45,000 of state planning and research funding for the Bicycle Pedestrian Plan. From one fiscal year to the next, we're allowed to carry over any unused MPO planning funds. So the $79,000 is not new funding, but is carryover, and we're allowed to program it into this year's work. The MPO's work plan has 5 major tasks: administration and management, data development, short-range planning, metropolitan planning, and special studies. This slide shows the breakdown by task. So I'm not proposing any new planning studies, but merely supplementing the existing work in certain areas as needed. Task 1, administration and management, $15,000 will go towards a variety of public involvement tasks, the public participation plan, and for public involvement with the bicycle and pedestrian plan that's been considerably greater than originally forecasted. Task 2, data development, has $10,000 to be added. This is for the increase in responsibilities with performance measures. Task 3, $12,000, is for short-range planning of upcoming projects. Task 4, $36,000 of carryover funds will be put towards the new Metropolitan Transportation Plan that will begin later this year. Task 5 in FY19 is set aside for bicycle and pedestrian planning. This slide highlights the $45,024 of state planning and research funding, a new funding source that TxDOT's made available to smaller MPOs in the state. Last year, the MPO staff applied for the maximum amount available to supplement the consulting contract for the bicycle and pedestrian plan. We've been approved for this additional funding, so your action today will be the next step that allows these funds to come to our MPO. This table on the slide summarizes both the updated figures of the $79,000 of carryover and the $45,000 of SPR funds. Last week, the MPO Technical Committee approved these figures and recommended that they be brought to the Policy Board for approval. That concludes my remarks. Are there any questions from the public or from board members?
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve as presented?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Number 7, approval of resolution adopting the Texas Department of Transportation safety performance measures. Ms. Owen.
Yes, before we get to the specifics of the resolution to be adopted, allow me to provide some background information on performance management. Performance management is a new federal requirement of the FAST Act for MPOs and for TxDOT. It's basically a performance-based approach to planning road and highway projects. To make better informed decisions about how to invest transportation funding, we're using goals, measures, and data aimed at a better performing transportation system. We set targets, we develop plans, and we report the results. And the results are a better connected system and communities. Performance management, in a nutshell, is a strategy that uses system information to make investment and policy decisions in order to achieve national and state performance goals. Performance management is focused in 4 areas: safety, pavement and bridge, system performance, and transit asset management. The FAST Act requires for each of these areas they come in phases over time with specific deadlines. First, we're going to set targets for safety, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Later this year, we'll set targets for pavement and bridge and so forth. I'd like to say that performance management, performance-based planning is already in place. The MPO voluntarily began that process years ago, and so has the Texas Department of Transportation. Safety in the MPO area is the most important transportation factor that's considered when we select our long-range projects. The MPO Policy Board approved a project ranking system back in 2014, and when we evaluate major projects for funding, safety is the #1 factor with the highest weight. What's new in the realm of performance management is that we take things a step further and we set specific targets to be achieved over time in order to meet our goals. Other examples of performance-based planning are TxDOT's Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. The focus on safety is a multi-pronged approach for reducing dangerous crashes. In addition to designing and building safer highways, there's an emphasis and funding on addressing distracted driving, impaired driving, pedestrian safety, roadway and lane departures, speeding, and many others, all with the goal of reducing fatalities and serious injury crashes. So what's the process for performance management? Well, MPOs and DOTs are now required to, first of all, establish your safety targets. Second of all, set target criteria for 5 of these safety measures. And then 3, later, report whether or not the targets were achieved. So establishing targets. So TxDOT, in collaboration with MPO Input, has established and adopted these safety targets. And they are the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities, number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries, and number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries involving bicyclists and pedestrians. Step 2 is to set target criteria for each of these 5 measures. This chart shows the number of fatalities historically from 2011 to 2017 and a projection out to 2022. In 2011, there were about 3,000 fatalities in the state of Texas. In 2017, there were 3,775. Based on a linear trend line, the number is expected to rise to 4,327 out to the year in 2022. The goal is to set a target reflecting a 2% reduction by the year of 2022, even based on the increase that we're expecting in population and economic growth that Texas is projected to have, which is about 1.8% growth per year. To put these numbers in perspective, the population in Texas is about 28 million and growing. For the area of fatalities, let me say that the loss of one life is one too many. Even one death on the transportation system is unacceptable. MPO staff will continue to work with TxDOT to develop projects, programs, and policies that assist in eliminating serious injuries and fatalities across all modes of travel. TxDOT has spent a considerable amount of time, resources, and time developing the safety targets and this methodology to create this target criteria. So this is where the challenge begins. A 2% reduction over 5 years reflects the best assessment of both the likely amount of future travel and the potential to reduce risk over that 5-year period. It's my hope and the hope of every transportation planner, every engineer, that the number of fatalities in the future could be drastically reduced. We'd be ecstatic if we could reduce that by 20%, 40% or more. Addressing safety, however, is multifaceted with challenges and variables that are outside of our control, such as distracted driving, texting while driving, and so on. So the harsh reality is that fatalities and serious injuries are on the rise. The next slide shows the safety target, which is serious injuries. This slide depicts the trend line projection for the number of serious injuries based on data since 2012, which had about 16,170 serious injuries. The trend line projection with a 2% reduction in 2022 results in a serious injury target of about 19,065. This slide shows serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. This is that serious injury rate that I spoke of a moment ago. This slide shows the historical data since 2012 and an estimate of the serious injury rate out to 2022. Unlike other crash trends in Texas, the serious injury rate has been declining in recent years and it's projected that this trend will continue. So this particular target was set at 6.47 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. The last of the 5 safety targets addresses non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries that involve bicyclists and pedestrians. In 2012, there were 1,800 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries in Texas, and it's projected to be about 2,696 by the year 2022. A 2% reduction by the year 2022 results in a target of 2,642. I wanted to give you this data so you kind of get a sense of what our targets are and what the numbers look like statewide. In your handouts is a draft resolution, and on page 3 you'll find this table. It's essentially a breakdown of the numbers that were represented in my previous slides. It shows the historical numbers from 2014 to 2016 with targets for 2017 and 2018. The overall goal is to reduce these 5 safety targets by 2% by the year of 2022, with the exception of the serious injury rate, which is projected to be lower. The MPO Technical Committee has recommended that TxDOT's 5 safety targets and the target criteria be brought to the Policy Board for adoption. I want to say that TxDOT developed these targets over a period of about almost 2 years. We knew that these things were coming when MAP 21 was adopted, and then of course the FAST Act came into play, and they had quite a few of members of the Executive Committee of the Texas Association of MPOs provide input. What would be our targets? What would be our criteria to measure these targets? So this is, while you look at these numbers and charts, there's been an extensive amount of time and energy that's gone into that, of course, with MPO input. These are by far the best measures. You may be wondering, well, what if we created our own measures or our own targets? Even if we deviated and set our own targets, we simply don't have the staff resources to set and track our own targets. I would like to say that 24 out of the 25 MPOs in the state of Texas have adopted TxDOT's targets. So this concludes my remarks. Are there any questions or comments from the public or from board members?
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the transportation safety performance measures.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Number 8, presentation of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Citizen Survey results.
Thank you. As you know, we conducted a citizen survey for the Bicycle Pedestrian Plan. We had about 1,774 citizens participate in the survey, and that number of citizen responses really greatly exceeded our expectations. So we're really thrilled with the response, and I wanted to say thank you to all those who filled out the survey. And so I'd like to update you on key findings. Also want to mention that there were, on the interactive map that we hosted out with the survey, there were about 140 comments that folks had posted on that web map. One of the first questions we asked was, how often do you walk or run to get to where you need to go? The responses, the choices were for exercise, or to get to the bus, or to get to where you need to go. For this question, the choices were never, occasionally, often, or very often. The darker the shaded color, the higher the frequency people reported walking or running. The most common reason people report walking or running is for exercise or recreation purposes. In contrast, most of the respondents to our survey don't often walk for their daily transportation needs, including where you need to get to go or to get to the bus. Because this only advances the slide. That's the one thing. Tim, if you would, do you mind sitting at the desk? And you kind of going to read your transcript and just scroll it down for me? Thank you. Then we asked citizens to finish the sentence. I would walk or run more often if, And so this question basically attempted to understand what infrastructure or engineering-based measures would be most effective in encouraging people to walk or run more often. Creating more paved trails and more sidewalks were the measures most likely to make respondents walk or run more often. Although to lesser degrees, improving the conditions of existing sidewalks, creating more safe opportunities to cross streets, and creating wider buffers between roadways and sidewalks would also make most respondents walk or run more often. The measures having the least amount of impact on respondents' choices to walk or run were shortening waiting intervals for crossing streets, making existing sidewalks ADA accessible, and improving bus stops. When asked if improvements were made for walking or running, which 3 changes would be most important? Respondents again indicated the most support for basic infrastructure, most notably paved trails, which was chosen at 65%, and more sidewalks at 59%. All survey responders, regardless of how often they walk or for the purpose of walking, reported similar priorities. Then the survey shifted to, how often do you ride your bike? Most survey respondents reported never biking or biking only occasionally for any reason. The most common reason for biking was for casual exercise or recreation. 32% of respondents bike once a week or more for this reason. For long distance or for high-speed exercise recreation, 25% bike once a week or more for this reason. If improvements were made for biking, which 3 changes would be most important? As you can tell, we sort of segregated the questions for walking and running, and then we asked questions for those who were biking. The 3 changes that would be the most important, the top one was creating more paved trails. That was most frequently selected as the improvement of choice. That was 52%, followed by connecting trails and bike lanes to more destinations. Also, creating more on-street bike lanes was 44%, and protecting bicycle from car traffic ranked at 40%. I would also like to indicate that whilst the majority of our survey responders do walk, run, or bike for recreation, we did have folks that indicated that their purpose for walking, riding, or biking is for transportation purposes. So it was a smaller percentage of those that filled out the survey, but we certainly are planning for all users of the transportation system, including drivers. The last question was, where would you be likely to ride a bike? We showed folks these different pictures and these different images and asked them to select all of the images in which you would be likely to ride a bicycle. 76% would ride in a bikeway completely separated by traffic by a protective barrier. 65% said they would ride on a shared use trail entirely separated from a roadway. Nearly half of respondents, at 48%, said they would ride on a traditional dedicated bikeway on a 2-lane street with parking. Whereas slightly fewer, 42%, said they would ride on a dedicated lane along a high-speed 4-lane roadway in a more rural context. Fewer yet, 29%, are willing to ride on a shoulder bikeway on a rural 2-lane road, and only about 1 in 5 respondents favored streets designated as a shared bikeway with sharrow, what we call sharrows, pavement markings. So as you can see, bikeways with the greatest separation from traffic attracted the most favorable responses. So what did we learn from the survey respondents? Well, the survey told us that folks walk and bike more often for exercise and recreation than they do for transportation purposes. People who currently walk for transportation walk more often if infrastructure was improved and if areas were made to feel safer from crime. The top 3 choices, I just want to mention these to you again, just so you can sort of see them, for walking and running are more paved trails, more sidewalks, existing sidewalks in better condition, in other words, improve the sidewalks we have today. And for biking, the top 3 choices were more paved trails, existing trails and bike lanes that are better connected to where I need to go, and more on-street bike lanes. So you can see that both groups prefer the greatest separation from traffic, obviously for safety reasons. A complete 11-page report summarizing the survey is available online at longviewtexas.gov/walkbike. And as far as the next steps are concerned, the consultant has been developing our plan based on the survey input. Staff is undergoing technical review of the plan, and in the upcoming months, we'll have a public meeting to review the draft plan. In May, the policy board will be adopting the Bicycle Pedestrian Plan. I do also want to mention that this week we met with White Oak officials, with Mayor Cooch and some of his staff, and Mayor Wells and his staff as well, to get their input on the specific needs of their community as far as the bikeways are concerned and as far as sidewalks and where some of the greatest needs. So we're working in concert with those two communities, as well as we'll be meeting next week with TxDOT staff and taking a look at some of the recommendations that we're considering at this point for state highways. So we want to be sure and engage all of our partners to create a reasonable and a realistic plan for our future. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions or comments?
If there's no other comments, we'll move on to number 9, staff comments. Are there any comments from staff?
Judge, the only other comment that I have was to extend birthday wishes to Gladewater Mayor Harold Wells. Today is his birthday, so we're pleased and want to celebrate another year of life for him.
Wants to sing happy birthday to you?
Yeah, I would appreciate it. I have no gifts. Nobody's giving me any cookies or anything. Karen gave me a Coke yesterday.
How about a hand?
I am 77 and proud of it.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. This is my best party.
Great.
My only party, I'm afraid, Judge.
Probably right.
Probably, yeah.
I have no other comments.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. We are adjourned. Well, never-